So our third speaker in this session is Asya Pereltsvaig, who will give a talk with the title Modeling Topic and Focus, Evidence from Russian Eventive Nominalizations.
Okay, so it's probably no surprise to anyone that languages differ as to how much topic and focus and information structure in general can affect syntax. In some languages like English, you have only one frozen word order and it cannot change depending on information structure. On the other side, we have languages like Russian that use word order extensively for encoding information structure, and some languages like Italian are in the middle that you can have different word orders, like you can have VOS in addition to SVO, but not VSO, to encode exactly those kinds of information structural concepts. So one question would be what sort of parameter or parameters encodes facts that are illustrated here. And there are generally two approaches to modeling topic and focus. The cartography approach that was started by Luigi Rizzi in his famous paper, proposing that topic and focus are encoded by specialized functional projections in the split CP layers. So instead of just one CP, you have all of these projections on top of IP or tensP. And the alternative that's been emerging more recently is the anti-cartographic or non-cartographic approach, proposed in works such as Neelman and van der Koot. And instead of relying on functional projections, they say that topic and focus are encoded via mapping rules and licensing rules, and we'll see some of those a bit later as well. And depending on which approach we take, the parameters that distinguish languages, like was shown on the first slide, would be of different nature. In the cartographic approach, the relevant parameters are syntactic. So as Cinque and Rizzi say, languages differ in the types of movement that they admit and which heads and specifiers are realized overtly. So all of the stuff that happens in syntax proper. Whereas in the anti-cartographic approach, information structure parameters, or the variation is in the mapping rules that associate syntactic structures with either phonology for purposes of prosody or LF semantics, or maybe information structure if that's a separate level of representation or a separate interface. But crucially, the parameters are going to be post-syntactic. The cartographic approach in general rests on three pillars, and I'm going to describe them now, and I'm going to show in this talk later that all of these pillars of cartographic approach are challenged by the kind of data I'm going to look at. So the three pillars of the cartographic approach, the first one is the one feature, one head principle, which says that each morphosyntactic feature and topic and focus are considered morphosyntactic features, correspond to some syntactic projection and syntactic head, a specific slot, and the functional hierarchy. So basically that's exactly what Rizzi's analysis relied on. The second pillar, which is not logically necessary, but most work in the cartographic approach relies on it, is Keynes' antisymmetry, because antisymmetry allows us to have phrases that are very sort of uniform, like little Lego pieces that can then just be stacked one on top of the other. It allows for right branching structures only, spec head complement orders. There's no multiple specifiers and there's no adjunction, or rather there is a junction of only one thing, which is one specifier. And in order to get the right word orders, the anti-symmetrical cartographic approach has to rely very heavily on remnant movement because there's no rightward movement. So this is why cartographic approach relies heavily on antisymmetry. The third pillar is that movement is triggered because we have those functional projections that carry the relevant morphosyntactic features, and you get some kind of probe-goal relations. So it's crucially unexpected that the movement of a certain phrase X would have interpretative effects on some other phrase Y, right? If that thing is a topic, it has to move to a topic phrase. So things don't move for something else to have some interpretative effect. And we'll see that that's not what happens in our data. So I'm going to look at Russian eventive nominalizations, and I'm going to show how they make dents in each of those three pillars, and therefore I think that anti-cartographic approach is the correct way to go as far as topic and focus goes. So Russian eventive nominalizations, you have examples in 1A and B, and what's shown here is that, as was noted in previous literature, the order of the two arguments, which I'm going to, for simplicity, call S and O, external and internal arguments, the order of the arguments can be flipped. You can have both orders. And surprisingly, there is not much discussion of this fact in the literature, but I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about what is said about it. But a little background on the structure that I'm assuming, following some of my earlier work and also joint work with Ekaterina Lutikova. I've proposed somewhere that Russian eventive nominalizations are like the centaurs of a classical mythology that are half human, half horse creatures. In nominalizations, we have they're half verbal, half nominal. The bottom half is the verbal functional structure, which includes as much as the aspect phrase, which hosts the secondary imperfective eva, which according to Sergei Tetivosov is the highest verbal aspectual element that can be included in nominalizations. And on the top, we have nominal projections, which include not only DP as in earlier analyses for other languages like English, for example, but also such low projections as little np. And the derived noun itself is in little n. It's pretty low. Here, ... stands for things like quantify a phrase, classify a phrase, maybe projections for adjectives, all sorts of other nominal functional projections. So in his work, Len Babby mentions that you can get both word orders, and he says, oh, it's the usual Slavic, free word order stuff. In particular, he notes that if one of the arguments is pronominal, then it comes first. And that's true regardless of whether the pronominal argument is the S or the O. And similarly, though not noted by Babby, is that we have some kind of heavy NP shift effect, that if one of the arguments is structurally heavy, then it comes second. So you have bold-faced arguments that are heavy. Again, regardless of whether it's S or O, it comes second. So in this talk, I'm going to very quickly go over the first three questions listed here because I realize I won't have time to talk about them in detail, but I've already talked about them in my facile presentation, and the paper can be made available to anyone who's interested. I'm going to then focus more on the questions that were not touched upon in my earlier work. So the first question to ask is whether the two orders of the arguments are derivationally related, and I believe that that is indeed the case because there is no difference between the two word orders in any essential properties like adverbial modification, aspectual possibilities, argument structure. The only difference really has to do with information structure. And in order to figure out which order is the merge order and which one is derived, I applied Antoniuk's scope freezing generalization, which says that basically the merge order, the base order, is ambiguous, scopally ambiguous, and the derived order has this scope freezing effect. And based on that, I've shown that the basic order, the merge order, is S over O and not the reverse. And interestingly, it shows up in situations where we cannot tell from morphological marking which of the arguments is which happens if the internal argument, the O, is lexically case marked with genitive, touch, takes genitive, manage takes instrumental, and then the external argument is in the same morphological case. Those are interpreted uniformly as SO, and this is reminiscent of Jakobson's examples and clauses like might любит дочь, where you can't tell which is S and which is O, and they're interpreted as SO and not OS. And this was experimentally confirmed by Irina Sikerina in experimental work. So if the SO is the underlying order, then how is the OS order derived? Like in examples in 7, and logically there's two possibilities. Either the S moves to the right of the O, or the O moves to the left of the S. And to those of you allergic to the rightward movement, as Kane would be, there's a way to do it in the Kanian fashion by first taking the S, the external argument, and evacuating it out of the little np, and then taking that remnant little np and moving it even further to the left with the remnant movement, which will essentially give you the exact same thing as rightward movement. But I don't think that's the right analysis to do, because this analysis predicts that the external argument is going to be the rightmost thing in the nominalization. And that's actually not the case, because you can have the orders where various adverbial PPs follow the external argument. And to some speakers, those are actually preferred. And that order is exactly the problem for that kind of remnant movement analysis. On this slide, I have just a more elaborate example to show the same thing. So I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. So if it has to be the movement of the O over the S, the next question is where that O moves to. What's the landing site? And I could think of 3 possibilities. But I'll tell you about that in a second. But first, is it an A or A bar movement? Because the movement is so local, we're just flipping the arguments. It's sensible to think that it's A movement, but I've actually shown in my earlier work, based on data from binding and weak crossover, that it's actually A bar movement. And you can see in 10A, for example, that the O, which moved over the S, cannot bind into the S. So it doesn't land into a binding position. So where does it move to? Some kind of A bar position. One option is to use the specifier of that aspect phrase, because the head could host the eva suffix, but then the spec is just there, so why not use that? The second possibility is a junction, and the third possibility is to use some kind of topic or focus projection, which is exactly what the cartographic approach would do. But to decide between these options, we have to see how topic and focus are expressed in these nominalizations. I'm using standard definitions of topic and focus and contrastiveness, with the only little problem that the typical diagnostic for new information focus is questioning with a WH element. So in something like, what did John buy? John bought a pizza. A pizza is new information because it can be questioned by a WH word. The problem is, of course, we can't extract WH questions out of a nominalization because of its DP island. So basically just relying on context and what is known in context and what is new information. So these are sort of a minimal pair of examples that I Googled. In a text about Jewish history, we have destruction of Jerusalem by Vespasian. In a text about Roman history, destruction by Romans of Carthage. So you can see, depending on context, we get a different word order. Now, about what happens if we have contrastive focus. Well, contrastive focus, again, whether it's an S or an O, doesn't front to the far left, as noted for clauses in Nelman et al. They say that contrastive foci typically occupy positions to the far left. And in nominalizations, the contrastively focused element cannot precede the derived noun. In isolation, it can be sort of massaged to be sort of okay-ish for some speakers, but if you embed the nominalization in a sentence, that it becomes rather unacceptable to have it that far to the left. It becomes better if it occupies the medial position after the derived noun, but before the non-contrastive element. The non-contrastive focus element argument. But for some speakers, this is dispreferred. And the best position for contrastively focused argument, again, whether it's an S or an O, is actually the final position. but final should be understood final among the arguments because PP adjuncts can follow even that. So the best place here would be разрушение римлянами Иерусалима, а не Карфагена. Or разрушение Иерусалима римлянами, а не вавилонянами. In the final position among the arguments. Again, contrary to Nailman et al. And on this slide, I just put a couple of naturally occurring examples that Google found for me. So here in 16a, сперва присоединение к СССР, а потом захват Львова немцами. The underlined elements are the ones that are the contrastive focus. So in захват Львова немцами, you can see that the contrastively focused element is in the rightmost position among the arguments, or in general, nothing follows. 16b is just the same phrase in a different example. If we have a contrastive topic and contrastive focus, then as is typical for such constructions in clauses, contrastive topic precedes contrastive focus, triggering a particular intonational contour. And again, it doesn't matter whether we have a contrastive topic S or contrastive topic O, it precedes the other argument, like разрушение Сталинграда немцами и Берлина союзниками. Or разрушение немцами Сталинграда и союзниками Берлина. Okay, so how can we capture such facts? In particular, can we capture them by relying on topic and focus projections? And this brings me to the issue of proliferation of topic and focus projections in the literature. So it started with Rietz's work and having topic and focus positions in clauses in the very high clausal position in the clausal left periphery in the split CP. Soon thereafter, Belletti proposed that there's also a set of topic and focus projections much lower in the clause at the left periphery of little VP phase. And what about nominals? Well, there's topic and focus phrases there. So around the same time as Rietz's work, Giusti proposed that there's also topic and focus phrases in the split DP. So that would be above or intermixed with other DP level elements. None of those would work for us, seemingly, because we have nominalizations, but not as high as split DP. We need something that's lower in a nominalization. And in fact, there is a projection, a set of topic and focus projections that were proposed to occur at the edge of the little np. And that would seem to work for us, except it won't, because even that is still too high. So here I have a tree. Giusti's topic and focus phrases are above DP. And another set was proposed to be above little np. We need them lower than that. So we need yet another set of topic and focus projections. And the question is whether we can actually rely on the topic and focus projections that were proposed to be at the left edge of the little VP by Belletti, because we do have that lower portion of the clause, the little VP, so maybe that triggers those projections that Belletti proposed. The reason I don't believe that's the way to go is because I don't think it actually necessarily follows, even for Belletti's own data, that we have such projections. In particular, what she shows is that post-verbal subjects in Italian are low, and from that she jumps at the conclusion that they're in a low focus phrase because she just assumes cartographic approach. We're trying to decide between the two. We can't assume something and then use that to prove that that's the case. That would be circular logic. But there's nothing in her data that actually requires them to move into a dedicated focus projection, as opposed to just being in situ. And there's work by Brunetti and Same Clodovici on the same Italian data that shows that those low focus subjects are in situ. So short of actually proving for Belletti's own data that we have such topic and focus projections at the left edge of little VP, I don't think we should drag them into nominalizations either. Okay, well, let's review our three pillars of cartography and how far we got with that. So the first pillar was the one feature, one head principle. that principle is violated if the object moves into spec of aspect phrase. That was one of the options for its landing site, because aspect phrase is what hosts aspectual morphology. You can't do double duty for also hosting something becoming a topic. So that's not good. It's also violated, I think, by proliferation of topic and focus projections, because we have seemingly the same topic feature, the same focus feature, and a lot of different projections where it can be checked. Okay, the second pillar was the anti-symmetry, and this pillar is violated if the object moves into an adjoint position. That was our second option for the landing site for the O moving around the S. And the third pillar, the triggered movement, is also violated because in examples of OS order, without any contrastiveness, the O moves to get out of the way of new focus, the S being new focus on the right. It seems that the new focus is purely linear or positional, and the O moves away to allow for the S to be the new information focus. It's also violated by the optionality of contrastive focus triggering movement or staying in situ. So that's another problem. So instead of going the cartographic route, the analysis that I'm developing for this is the development of Nailman et al.'s proposals that relies on such features as topic, focus, and contrast. And contrast can co-occur with either topic or focus, and that's how we get contrastive topics and contrastive foci. According to Nailman et al., we have then licensing rules, such as the rule that says the focus is licensed in the closed final position. What I'm adding here is that it can also be licensed in nominal final positions for nominalizations. And then we have a set of mapping rules which account for various features, how they translate into intonational contours. I'm always confused about all the numbers of these contours. If I got them wrong, then please correct me. So that's it. I think we have time for questions. Thank you.
That's great. We've got plenty of time for discussion and questions. So, yes, Sasha, please.
I want to ask you to return to the slide where a structure with two genitives was represented.
The touching examples?
Yes, yes. Okay.
We'll get there. Yes.
Yes, perhaps here if this example is possible, it seems that the order should be like this, but it's interesting that there are examples where there are two genitives. Perhaps they are not fully acceptable either, but their order is reversed. There's something like исследование языка X Иванова и Petrova. It seems that if at all it's possible, it's marginal, just like 5A. The order should be like this, because исследование Иванова и Petrova языка X is absolutely prohibited.
Yes.
So what would you say?
The examples like the one you mentioned, those are not eventive nominalizations, they're resultative or result nominals. And in the result nominals, you always get the order OS and it can't be reversed. And notably, you don't get the same kind of heavy NP shift effect. So you can't say something like коллекция Эрмитажа картин голландских мастеров XVI века. That's bad even if the second argument is long. So that's different. And I think you get with исследование, you get a difference between исследование языка X Иванова и Петрова versus исследование языка X Ивановым и Петровым, which is flippable and which denotes an event rather than the actual paper or something like that's not an event.
I agree, totally
Yes,
agree.
yes, I know you would. Other questions?
Tanya?
I was just two questions. The first one is a clarification question. So, so I'm wondering which of the options you actually chose in the end, movement options, I mean. Among those you mentioned, movement to spec aspect phrase, junction, etc.
Yeah.
I think I missed it.
The third was the topical phrase, topical focus phrase. Yeah, so this is sort of a case of pick your evil. I personally pick the adjunction because I don't mind so bad, to have a junction, because I think the aspect is really, it already has a function of denoting aspect, and I don't like the proliferation of topic and focus, which seems that people just stick it wherever they need by data. That's kind of the main problem I have with the cartographic approach, is that they can actually get any word order facts that they need to get, because the technology of having this evacuation followed by remnant movement is very, very powerful. So the examples that I mentioned that are problematic, like these examples, they can get that too by evacuating the PP and then evacuating the external argument even higher and then moving the remnant. But there's no reasons to do those evacuations first other than to get the word order facts right. So I think it kind of really sort of detracts from the theory.
I agree, yeah, it's more attractive. And another question is, wouldn't it be a good idea to say that focus is actually VP final rather than both VP final and NP final that you proposed? So in inventive nominalization we still have this projection, we could unify this kind of maybe. I'm not sure whether it derives the order in the right way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that. Thank you. Yes.
Because I think there were several people who suggested that focus in Russian is at the right edge of the VP. So probably to maintain this idea. That's a suggestion.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I was, listening to talks about information structure in Russian. I always wonder why people don't take into account Natalia Slusev's work.
Whose work?
Natalia Slusev's work, which is the most detailed and important work on this topic so far. And actually, I think that actually her theory, which is based on relative information structure, and also on the idea that what you have to the right is not exactly the focus, but the part of the information structure which is least presupposed, so to say, is very much in line with your proposal. And I think I didn't make overt references to it, just in the interest of time, but I read her book, and I agree with much of what she says. Unfortunately, I read it after I've done some of this work, so I didn't refer to it directly, but like you mentioned, that we're in agreement about a lot of the issues there, but definitely, yes, thank you.
A small question, it's a follow-up of my previous question. So if we suppose what I largely agree with, that исследование языка Ivanova и Petrova is a result of nominalization, do we expect, and is it the case, that some context like в ходе исследования языка X Ivanova и Petrova are completely out, are unacceptable, because
I think that would be the prediction.
Be acceptable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's exactly what I would predict, and that's also seems to be my judgment to the extent that I still have any judgments left, but you guys tell me if that's indeed the judgment. В ходе исследования языка X Иванова и Петрова. Katerina doesn't like it, so okay. But we worked on this so much. Yes?
Yeah, my question is probably just out of my ignorance in the language. So you said that such as example is Litvania is resultative, and the other example that you gave, like Kasania and Upravlение, they are eventive. And
Yes.
can you tell me how to tell them from each other, which are eventive and resultative?
Well, eventive denote events, whereas resultative can denote objects or people. And you can have various sort of tests to distinguish them, like в ходе, which is in during or in the course of, and that only works with eventive. You also can use different predicates, like took a long time would work with eventive, would not go well with resultative nominals, and resultative nominals would work with predicates of location, for example.
Obligatory internal argument.
Obligatory internal argument, that's another yes, so that would be for resultatives, but not
Yeah,
for...
but it seems like you kind of test whether it's a resultative or eventive by looking at the word order.
No, not at all. The resultative only allows one word order, and the eventive allows two. So we can actually just stick to the order, the OS order, which the resultative allows, and disregard the other possibility for eventive and still have contrasting minimal pairs. One difference would be in the case marking, but case marking is kind of complicated because of the possibility of lexical case. But if there's no lexical case, then the external argument is going to be in the instrumental and eventive nominalizations and in the genitive in the resultative nominals. But I'd rather just kind of test them by using these other diagnostics that I mentioned and Katerina added too.
So, thank you, Asya.